Hey you beautiful people, welcome back to a new video on our channel Read Travel Become. In this video, I'm going to share some of my personal favorite historical fiction novels. So I have recommended a bunch of them on my channel before, like I'm not going to repeat the Book Thief, Khalid Hosseini's books if they can be counted as historical fiction because I just love these books and I have recommended them before. But in this video, I'm going to recommend some rare books, not rare, but books which I haven't talked before because I read them recently. Each of these books are beautiful in their own way. They taught me something different. They taught me to view at history from a different lens because of the characters, because of the beautiful, simple human writing, human centric writing that each of these novels had. So, going to be a very interesting video, fun recommendation, fresh new recommendations. So, make sure you watch the video till the end. You may never know which thought or fact may resonate with you and change the course of your life. So, let's get started. The first book on this list is actually a Christine Hanna novel, which I revisited. I had this book since a long time, but I read some of her other books, and this was kind of there for me, inviting me to be read again. I read it and I just thought how different and how beautiful her world is. The book I'm talking about is The Nightingale, which is essentially centered around Nazi occupied France. And I've read a bunch of novels about World War, especially from a lens of what actually happened, how nations fought, how people were affected. But this particular novel is told through the perspective of two sisters, and these two sisters have their own way of interpreting the war. One of the sisters is supposed to protect her own family. That's how she's fighting the war. And the other sister has actually joined the resistance with the Allied powers and is fighting Germany. So they have two very different worldviews about the war. The story keeps alternating between these two. And just how deeply human her writing is what makes me love this book so much. So I don't think any historical fiction list is complete without mentioning Christine Hanna. That's why I wanted to kick off this list by one of her works. The next book on this list is called Hamnet, which is a book I recently read. Now, it's got a very interesting premise. The premise is in the 15th century, I think 1580s, it's a story alternating between Shakespeare and his wife. It's a love story between these two. And the other story is about them mourning the death of their son, who was called Hamnet. So essentially, this story is about how Shakespeare might have come up with the concept of Hamlet because of the grieving of his son. So his wife's name is Agnes, who's also like her popular name is Anne Hathaway, which many people know is there's a lot of theories around, current Anna Hathaway's husband looks like Shakespeare and Shakespeare's wife was called Anne Hathaway. But Victorian England is told through the lens of everyday people and not a grand story which Shakespeare generally weaves into. This book reminded me of Palace of Illusions, in which Mahabharata is told from a perspective of a woman. Similarly, this story makes Shakespeare so human because generally we have only revered Shakespeare like this great author, this great person who has a fundamental understanding of humanity and just the concept of greed, hope, violence, all of these human characteristics, human emotions that he brings about might have come from the death of his son, is what is talked about in the story. Again, beautiful writing, very simple lyrical prose, and it's got that stroke of brilliance of you can see how tortured people, grieved people somehow have a chance of writing great literature. So interesting read. If you are a fan of the space, I would highly recommend you to check this book out. The next book on the list is, I think, on this entire list is the most feel good historical novel. And even the premise of the book is just mind blowing, which is what actually attracted me to get this book. The book is called West with the Giraffes, and the plot is very interesting. So, the plot basically is there's an old man, he's a veteran, and he has just found out that giraffes are going to be extinct. And he recounts a story in the 1930s where when he was a 17-year-old boy, he actually befriended two giraffes and he actually had a road trip with two giraffes from the east coast to the west coast of America. And this was all during the period of the Great Depression in America. So he recounts this 2 to 3 day road trip that they took, and it's just beautiful and endearing how he has talked about the relationship between a human and an animal. So basically, what happened was these two giraffes had survived a shipwreck, a calamity, an ocean calamity in the Atlantic, and they were supposed to be transported to the San Diego Zoo in California, which is one of the most popular zoos around the world. And this is a true story. And this novel is basically a story around how these three characters took a road trip. There are multiple characters here. There's a photographer, there's a zookeeper, there's an old man. Lot of interesting plot points and very, very feel good and something to think about, right? The connection between humans and animals, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl incident, which I didn't know about, which happened in Texas. Lots of good historical context and just a very good, unputdownable read. It's got that character of, you want to know what happens next. It's adventurous and quirky. You would like it for sure. So it's a rare gem. I feel it reminded me of Life of Pi in a way, but Life of Pi was more like philosophically heavy and metaphor heavy. This is a light read, but I would highly recommend this book because it's one of those rare gems which I found out, and I feel more and more people should definitely check out this book. The next on the list is actually a book which I'm waiting for it to be released. It's going to be released very, very soon. But as we all know, we all are fans of Amish Tripathi and especially his historical fiction novels. I know he's written a bunch of non-fiction books as well, but I'm really excited for the next release of his, which is the Chola Tigers. Lots of interesting plot points, lots of interesting history has been talked about. You know what? Let me read a blurb of the book and tell you what the book is about. So I have my Amazon open. The book is shortly going to be released. August 29th is the exact date. Mahmud of Ghazni believes he has crushed the spirit of Bharat. The Shivling at Somnath temples lies scattered and thousands are dead. But among the ashes of destruction, an oath is taken. Five people, a Tamil warrior, a Gujarati merchant, a devotee of Lord Ayappa, a scholar emperor from Malwa, and the most powerful man on earth, Emperor Rajendra Chola, resolved to undertake a perilous quest and strike at the heart of the invaders' kingdom. From the grandeur of the Chola Empire to the shadows of Ghazni's blood-stained court, the Chola Tigers is a scintillating story of a fierce retaliation, a story of unity forged through pain, of courage born from despair, and of vengeance that becomes dharma. So his last novel was from 2020, I guess, and I personally have been a huge fan of the original Shiva trilogy, which I guess introduced a lot of Indian people to the overall idea of reading fiction and not just reading books. That's what like attracted me the most towards reading Meluha trilogy as well. It was beautiful, especially Oath of the Vayuputras is my personal favorite in all of the three books. So just wanted to call it out that I'm really excited and really looking forward to reading the next historical fiction by Amish. And let's see, I'll definitely talk about the book when I get a chance to read it, and I'll share with you guys how I like the book. My next personal favorite historical fiction would be James by Percival Everett. Again, making rounds all over the internet, especially on Goodreads, of how people are raving about this book. Especially if you have read Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer's Adventures, you would love the retelling of this particular saga of the Mississippi adventures in America through the lens of one of the slaves called Jim, and just the way how slaves looked at people, looked at white people, of them dominating the slaves. It's just so different and unique, right? Especially the language part. There are some sentences when they're talking to white people, they talk in a certain dialect, and when they're talking amongst their own people, they talk in a certain way. That has been actually reflected in the book as a different language, which I found to be extraordinary. The writing was very, very unique and fresh. And you guys know I appreciate people doing something out of the box. So this was one of that. And just the whole idea of the book talks about some very bad people who have done some very bad things to other people merely on the basis of their skin color. But because it's a heavy concept, it needs a certain nuance, it needs a certain care to tell a story like this. And all of this is done through adventure, drama, and even humor. I would say there's a lot of humor instilled in this book as well. So it's a very good book. It's packaged very well. It reminds you of a Raju Hirani movie in some sorts. So yeah, that would be my next favorite historical fiction novel. And the last book on this list is again one of those writers I feel uh, whose name should be mentioned on this list of historical fiction, because her previous book, which we also talked about in this video, Palace of Illusions, was one of my favorite. Chitra Banerjee Devkaruni's latest book called Independence, which is essentially about the partition of India and Pakistan told through the lens of three sisters. If you loved Palace of Illusions, Forest of Enchantments, there's a very, very good chance you would love this novel as well, because we all know, especially Indians, Asians, know the plight of the partition that affected the people of both of these subcontinents. There have been multiple stories told, both fictional and non-fictional stories around that. Train to Pakistan was really good around this. But Independence is much more human-centered, and it's much more grounded into interpersonal relationships and human-centered story. I loved how again she has aced her value proposition. She has aced her unique ability to tell a grand saga with the help of resilient characters. How characters, because of their innate nature, are not only resilient in the plight of war and a thing like partition, but they're also very empathetic towards each other, and they're just motivating in a way. They teach you a lot about grit and perseverance in the times of plight, which I personally resonate a lot. So yeah, again, very good book, very good uh, addition to the list of historical fiction novels that we're talking about, because yeah, she has got the skill to write a very good historical fiction. Because again, historical fiction is such a difficult genre to write, because not only you are taking some creative liberty to create a story out of it, but you want to stay true to the grounds of history on which you are building up a story, right? And generally it's said that history only talks about war and men, and generally women centric perspectives are lost because nobody had the time to actually sit down and record what was going on with people. So this is a unique space where writers are actually using historical context and using female narratives also to get in some kind of light into what exactly might have happened, which I read somewhere. I read a beautiful blog on how this thing is coming up. So you would find, especially in the historical novel section space, there are a lot of good stories coming up which tell you more about history than history books themselves. So yeah, just wanted to share those ideas with you guys. And yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you like all of the recommendations. If you have read any of these, please let me know in the comment section which of them was your favorite. And if you feel there is a book or a set of books which you feel everybody else should read, do mention them in the comment section below as well. So thank you so much for watching this video till here. That's all for this one. See you in the next video. Bye bye.